What do filmmakers need to know about theatrical distribution?
That it's not for everyone, but it is for some film. It makes sense for some films, and that it is, and it has to align with your goals essentially. And so, the last release we did for a film called My Love Affair with Marriage, their goal was audience, and specifically their goal was audience in theaters. And it was like a sub goal, like a more specialized audience goal, and that made sense. There were other things that the release accomplished, but the way we released the film, we told them initially, because it's a kind of challenging film. It's a feminist animated film. It's not something that, adult animation generally doesn't do well. Feminist animation, who knows? It also dealt with a woman coming to age in the old Soviet Union. So it's like a lot of things. It had a lot of challenges. And so we said, well, we think we can do 5 to 10 cities. We ended up doing, I think we're up to 36 now, because it's still playing. And because of the way that we release films, a lot of those screenings were sold out, or half packed or 2/3 packed. So they were able to, and they traveled to nearly every screening. And they really want to engage with their audience, and they do it in a really wonderful way. So that's a reason to do theatrical. And the other reason to do theatrical is if you feel your film is for career, and the career component is press. And if your film can garner, even though press gets tougher and tougher and tougher every almost month as journalists get fired from publications, and so that makes it, the LA Times just fired a slew of entertainment journalists. And even before that, it was very difficult to get a review in the LA Times. And now it's going to be nearly, maybe not impossible, but that much more difficult. But we've been very lucky on the releases that we've done. We've gotten tons of press. And that then can have ramifications for the film and for the life of the film. One of the things that a theatrical can do with that press not only helps the career of the filmmaker, but it also helps the career of the film. So for instance, My Love Affair with Marriage, they had made sales overseas. They had been in, I think, like 100 film festivals, some in the United States, but mostly overseas. And they were screening theatrically in France and a lot of broadcast sales, but nothing in the United States. And I came on board. I don't do a lot of work as a sales agent, but I occasionally do, especially if I'm involved in a project on a long-term basis. And to be honest, when I started going out to companies to try to sell the film in the United States, before the theatrical release, I got a couple quick kind of like, we don't know what to do with this film. And so I just shut it down. I said, let's see what the press is like and see if that helps. And it got a New York Times critics pick, and then it got a bunch of other press. And then after that, plus a 30-city theatrical release, then distributors, and in this case, digital distributors, there were several good ones, and there aren't that many good ones left, unfortunately, and that's part of what makes distribution also difficult, but there still are enough to survive. And not to saying that you always, and the other thing is you don't always have to go through a digital distributor. You can do distribution in another way outside of traditional digital distribution. And then not only were there distributors interested, but also a small advance as well. So, so that was, those are the things that you can garner from a theatrical release. And I think all of the theatrical releases we've done, I would say that they do elevate the film and affect the life cycle of the film. And I would say also the careers of the filmmakers. But they cost some money. It's not cheap to do a theatrical release.
Well, that was my next question, in that you have talked filmmakers out or advised them against doing theatrical, and what would be the situation for that?
Is if the film, there are a number of films that are really good films, but are not films that I think critics are going to respond to. We actually even did a theatrical release with one of those films and actually did quite well with the theatrical, but there was no press, like literally no press. But there was but it did elevate the film, and it was more of an impact campaign, and it allowed the organizations to elevate what they were doing in their communities, because the film was at a theater, like it felt more than being at a local library or a community center, etc. So, but in general, and then what I mostly talk people out of is I think what you more mean, because I don't, yeah, there will be some films that I talk out of theatrical releases, but I'll talk more films out of Oscar qualifying, or needing that they have to rush to Oscar qualify for this year versus next year. And and there's one filmmaker who we've become good friends, and he still says that the reason he hired me to do their release was because I talked him out of Oscar qualifying. And because unless you have the resources, unless you have at least 100, I don't know, say 60 at the low end to $150,000, doesn't really make sense to qualify for the Oscars, because you're not going to be able to promote it to the Academy to make a difference. And that's you have Netflix and Amazon and HBO or Max paying millions of dollars on their Oscar campaigns. And so if you're not prepared to have some resources, now that's not saying that there aren't reasons to qualify and have a small budget. There are tactical things that make sense, but you just have to understand why you're doing that, and understand and have really managed expectations as far as what's possible with the resources that you have. So like the Sam Now crew, they did an Oscar campaign, even though they were a long shot. But what it allowed them to do, and they weren't nearly certainly not in the streamer budgets. They had a modest budget to do a campaign. But what it did is it introduced them to a lot of people in the Academy. So it actually raised their profile within the Academy. And they actually just got nominated for a Peabody Award. So maybe they would have gotten nominated without their campaign. But I have a feeling their campaign contributed to their nomination for the Peabody Award. So anyway, I think, again, like everything, it's a case-by-case basis. Like every film, I'll just say it again, every film is different and should be treated differently. And because there is this year especially, there were a number of kind of fun DIY Oscar qualifying campaigns by a number of films. And I think that's I'm going to start doing some case studies similar to this with filmmakers. And that'd actually there's already been a little bit done about that. But there are a number of films that kind of joined together and did these DIY Oscar campaigns with each other. And it'd be interesting to talk to them and see what they felt they got out of that, in a sense. And that also became their theatrical release as well. So